Okay, so you want to find out what this fangled attraction is? Stick around. Okay, so let's get into the building side of things. As you would have seen in the intro, we need to transfer liquid from one vessel to another vessel. So whether it's from a big jar or a bucket to a bottle, or from one bucket to another bucket, there's two main ways we can do this. We can either pressurize the one vessel, so it pushes the liquid from one side to the other side, or alternatively, we can create suction in the one vessel, and that will suck the liquid from one side to the other side. So how I did this and how I managed to build my own is I used standard fittings. So what you're going to need is a T-fitting of some kind. I chose the big 32mm T-fittings to do this because the 25mm fittings will fit into it nice and snug, and that will allow me to take everything apart if I spill or whatever, but it creates a nice little semi-airtight seal within the system. So you're going to need one T-piece. You're going to need a couple of straight reducers. The reason for the reducer is I chose a reducer that will fit into the top of a bottle. Once I put a little bit of tape and packing around it, it will fit and create a seal around the top. It is also smaller than the diameter of the tube that I'm going to use to suck the liquid from one side to the other side. So there's space around it, which I'll explain a bit later on. So you're going to need a couple of those. I normally buy 3 of them at a time. In case I need one or whatever, I've got a spare. Normally only use 2. You also need a end plug. So an end plug is one that has no hole in the side, used to plug the end of a hose. You're going to need a piece of that hose as well. This is the 25mm hose that will fit onto the 25mm fittings. Cool. Then you will also need a airline fitting if you choose to pressurize the vessels. This is a normal hose tail barb with threaded end at the other side and a hose tail on the other side that fits into my tube that I have bought. Okay. You'll also need a tap of some kind. You don't need the tap, but I prefer to use it. It decreases the amount that I spill. You can always just bend the hose open and close to prevent it from going out. So you can choose to do that if you want to, but I prefer the little tap that you saw me use in the previous video. You also need some way to make a hole for the gland. Yes, I love using glands. So the gland's going to fit into the top of this. So you're going to need somewhere to make a hole. I will once again be burning my hole in. I prefer to burn the holes. It just makes it a lot easier for me to get my hole sizes right and all that other stuff. Some thread tape, some insulation tape, and then I went and I bought the repair kits for those 16-litre pressure sprayers from any of your co-op stores. I bought the repair kit for it. So it has these lovely stainless steel tubes. I have a long and a short one depending on what type of vessel and what type of bottles you are using. For the bottle filling, we will use the short one. For sucking up liquid from the vessel, I'll use the long one. I also have a piece of tubing. I bought a 2-meter piece of tubing, and I just cut a couple of pieces that we're going to use. The exact measurements will be determined by your size of vessel that you're going to be using. So if it's a deep bucket or a wide bucket, or is it a deep jar or whatever, it's going to be dependent on you. But this is what you need. So you can tailor make it as I go along to see what we're going to do. Okay. Also have a pair of pliers. I've got a carpet knife here. I've got a pair of vice grips in case I need them. As always, my trusty blowtorch. And then I've got a bucket of water to quench whatever I'm burning into, to cool it down nice and quick so I don't over melt or something like that. So to start off with, explain what's going to happen. Is this piece is going to fit into there. This will then be taped up, so it creates an airtight seal for the top of your vessel. Your vacuum cleaner or your compressor or your tire inflator or your bottle or whatever you're going to be using that's going to provide air pressure or suction is going to connect to this side here. So I prefer to reduce the size of this suction. If I'm going to use suction, I prefer to reduce the size. This just makes it a little bit more manageable for my vacuum cleaner, so I don't create too much suction. Then what's going to happen as well is we will create a semi-airtight seal at the top here using the gland once again, and this is going to slide all the way through. So if you would imagine you have the gland sitting on top here, grabbing onto the top of the tube. This goes through there. Then you will see on the bottom of this tube here, we have a space around, so it can move around freely. So this is what's going to either force the air into the jar or suck it out of the jar, so it pulls the liquid from the other jar, or it pushes it to the other jar. So you'll see now when I do the demonstration on how to use it. So the main thing is that this needs to fit there. So this is going to fit onto the top of your jar there like this. That will have a tube going to your other side. You'll attach your suction or your blow on this side, and that will then suck or blow the material or the liquid from one side to the other. Okay, so let's get to building. First things first, we need to now fit this little tube into this pipe here. You can try and force it in to create a nice and tight fit, but I prefer to use a quick blowtorch just to heat up that tube a little bit. Okay, so now that we have this piece fit into this piece here, I normally make my pieces interchangeable, so that means that I can move from either blowing or sucking depending on what I'm going to be doing. So I'll take this piece here and I will force it in here, create this little tube a little bit bigger so I can slip the other pieces in and out quite easily. So once again, all I need to do is heat up the piece. So by heating up the piece and pushing this piece in, like that, and heating it up and cooling it down quite quickly, we will create, we'll allow this to fit in there quite nicely, and it's nice and tight on there, or else you're going to struggle to get it in. So this one will be for our vacuum hose. Next one is going to be for our air system. So if we're going to push air in, first of all we need to burn our fitting in. So what I'm going to do is, once again, use my fitting, heat it up and burn a hole into the top here. So by getting this piece nice and hot and pushing it into there, we have created a nice airtight seal around the top here. So this will now be for our hose fitting to attach to it. Okay, so next up we need to be able to fit our gland in the top here. So the way I'm going to fit my gland is I'm just going to use one of these pieces and I'm just going to cut off the top piece here, and then I am going to burn it into here so I can insert my gland. can't heat up my gland. That's just going to melt the plastic. So all I'm going to do is just cut this piece off. So this is still too small to fit this gland in here. So I'm just going to heat up my copper piece, just a piece of copper that I've got lying around, create the hole large enough so I can fit my gland. Okay, almost there. Okay, so that should be close enough for the hole. Now I'm going to use my carpet knife just to take off the excess pieces of plastic and get the hole to the right size so I can fit my gland in. There we go. So my gland will now slide in and fit nicely. Okay, so while I have my fitting, I need to burn a hole into the side here. You'll see later on why we need this hole. But yeah, so the hole size is roughly the size that my thumb will be able to cover. So I'm just going to use the same fitting again, just to burn a hole in the top of this fitting here. Once again, just use your carpet knife and just take off those burnt ends. Okay, so now your thumb will be able to close that hole completely and create a seal around your thumb. So that's what you're looking for when you're doing those holes. So we have our vacuum set. We have our pressurizer set, and then next thing we need is and we also have our top fitting that fits onto our pipe. Okay, so next thing we're going to need is we need to now assemble all the parts, and the parts that are not going to come loose, I'm going to put some thread tape around it and squeeze them in quite nicely. The parts that I want to be able to take apart, I'm going to leave as is, and then the main part of this thing is assembled, and then we just need to do the hose side. So let's get to assembly. First things first, some thread tape. Once again, I'm using a nice thick Titan brand, so it's the thicker type of thread tape. That thin thread tape just doesn't have enough meat for me, and you use way too much of it to get your thing all sealed up. So I prefer to use the Titan brand. There's many other brands out there. So yeah, there we go, just a couple of turns around it to create a nice seal, and then we're going to slide this in to there. Okay, boom, there we go. Next thing, just a little bit of thread tape on the fitting here. The reason why I use thread tape is safe to use within your distilling and your brewing processes. It doesn't leach out any chemicals or anything like that. And yeah, so let's screw that bad boy in place, and there we go. Next up, our pipe. So our pipe fits in there, and we can now close our gland onto it. Okay, there's our gland closed onto it. Our bottom piece will fit in. Just going to put a little bit of thread tape around it once again. Ensure that we have a semi-airtight seal going on for us. Remember, this doesn't need to be 100% airtight. It's just so we can force air into the vessel and either force air in or suck air out. There we go, that's that piece done. Next up, we need to create the seal so it can fit onto the top there. So first things first, I'm going to use a bit of thread tape to create some thickness here. Remember, don't close that hole there. You want that air gap between the two hoses. There we go, almost there. So once we have that in place, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to secure it with a little bit of insulation tape. You can use clear tape, you can use any tape you want. I just find insulation tape is a bit more water resistant than all the other tapes. Pull it nice and tight around that, and boom, here we go. So now we are 95% done. We need to get this piece into here. Because we heated it up and cooled it down, we now have this piece that looks like that. Okay, so now it's time to finish the assembly. So we have our piece that's going to fit into the top of our bottles or into the top of our vessels, depending on which one we're going to be using. So if you're going to be using a bucket or a cooler box or whatever, make sure that your hole size and this correlates so you can create a semi-airtight seal by just pressing down on the top of it. If any of the pieces move, take some insulation tape and just tape them all nice and tight and in place. Next thing we need to do is attach our pipe to our gland. This goes all the way through and it comes out the bottom there. Then you'll see there's an air gap at the bottom. This is what's going to allow the air to flow in or be pulled out. So next up, a short piece. This is my piece that I do the siphoning with. I'll explain that later on. A short piece that's going to fit onto the tap. Other piece that fits onto the other side of the tap. And this then fits onto the top of our pipe. Here we go. So the reason for the tap is I just prefer to use the tap to turn the flow on and off while siphoning. So this side goes into the bottle or into the jar or into the bucket. This side goes into where you want to transfer the liquid to. I'm just using a standard vacuum cleaner, nothing special. Then I have a pipe that fits over the top like that. Once I turn on the vacuum, I'm going to keep this shut here. So once I turn on the vacuum, I'm going to close this hole with one of my fingers. This will then engage the suction or the siphon action inside of the bottle, sucking the liquid from one side to the other side. But I will control it by opening and closing this valve here. So let's get to it. Okay, there we go. And that's how it works. Sucking from one vessel to the other vessel. Now, if you like me and you use a plastic container, so I use these plastic carboys. Now, they make it rather difficult to create suction inside of them, because the moment you create any form of suction, I'm going to quickly show you guys what I mean. So the moment I create suction within this vessel here, so the moment I create the suction, what happens is this thing will collapse in on itself. So if you're using glass or anything that is structurally sound like a cooler box, you would be fine to create suction in it. But if you're using a cardboard like this, you would need to use pressure. And that's why I made that secondary fitting that I showed you guys. So that secondary fitting will fit into the back of that piece now. So let me just quickly get this into there. Now we're going to use this fitting here. So we're going to remove this piece and we're going to insert our pressure fitting. We're going to remove our pipe because we're not going to use this short pipe. We are now going to change over to our long pipe. So my long pipe has been designed so it fits almost close to the bottom of the vessel, depending on the height of this here. And then I took my piece of pipe and I cut it into a small piece that fits onto the bottom side here. So I don't have that bendy piece of pipe that I'm struggling with. I just have a straight piece going down. Then what I did is you'll see that I cut on the curve of this tube here, I cut this at an angle. Now what this will allow me to do is when I'm sucking, it's going to suck from the top and from the side, and not if it's into the liquid like this with a normal pipe to suck in from the bottom. So if I have any of that sediment that formed at the bottom, I don't suck up that sediment. So this is my version of a siphon, and it just makes it easier for me not to suck up that sediment at the bottom. So all that happens is I attach my little sucker piece at the bottom. I double check the height to ensure that I go depending on how deep I want to suck, and then I just attach my tube to the top. So there we go. So with all of that attached, now all I need to do is fill my bottle. So once again, I'm going to now be using pressure instead of the suction. So for that, I have one of these small little compressors. That tube fits onto there. You can use a big 200, 300, 400 liter compressor if you want to. This small one just makes it nice and convenient for me to use. So same as before, the moment I turn on this compressor, my finger is going to close this side of the hole. By closing that side of the hole, what's going to happen is I am going to be creating pressure inside of this tank. That pressure then will in turn force the liquid up the pipe and through into my bottle. This goes in there. I'm going to control this valve with my thumb to ensure that I fill it to the point I need it to be filled. So once again, keep the little knob closed while you get everything nice and set up. Turn on your compressor. Create the pressure in your tank and open up. Once you're at your level, close your little tap off, allow the last little bubbles to fall out, and you're done. As simple as that. That's my vacuum system or my pressure system. Depends on which way you want to use it. Hope this helps. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. If there's anything else that you need some assistance with, please drop it down in the comments. I'll be glad to assist.